Welcome back. This is my Yamaha AG06 mixer. While it can function as an audio mixer for streaming or live sound, I use it mostly as an audio interface for recording videos, particularly creating content for YouTube. Yamaha claims this unit has multiple uses, which include live streaming, podcasting, music production, or video conferencing. And you know, it appears to be a hybrid analog mixer with USB, but actually it's a small digital mixer that doubles as a 2-in, 2-out audio interface. The original version of this came out in 2015, and it included the AG06 and a smaller AG03. I had those mixers at that time, and then it was updated to the Mark II version, which is what this is, in 2022. The biggest change with the Mark II versions is they went to USB-C on the back. They've also added the headset connections, which are useful for game streaming, and they added a mix minus button, which I will explain a little bit later. There is a white version and there's also a black version. This is the white version, but a black version of this is also available. So I'm going to go over the basic specs and functions of this mixer. And if you look, starting with the output, you can connect your studio monitor speakers here and control the level with this knob. Put your headphones in here and you can control that level here. There is a main output here. There is no level control for that, but the main mix that you set up on here will appear here, but it's not affected by these knobs here. So that's the basic thing that you need to know. For that, there's a power switch. I have it connected to power on the back, on a USB-C power input on the back. I'll show you more about that in a little bit. Then we have 2 channels for microphones. These are multi-use. You can use line level inputs. Channel 2 also supports guitars. Then you have stereo inputs on channels 3, 4, as well as stereo inputs on 5, 6. You can see these use 1/4-inch jacks and these use these RCA jacks where you could connect up something like a tape deck or other more consumer type device here. Now let's go back to the basics of the first 2 channels. The first 2 channels are mono, and they have, as I showed you before, this has a line and mic button, as does channel 2, but channel 2 also has a high impedance switch for electric guitars. So if you want to play a guitar through here, you typically would engage that on channel 2. There's also 48-volt phantom power. If you have a powered mic, you turn this on here. That provides phantom power to both channels at the same time. I typically do use this with a shotgun mic from Sennheiser. This works just fine, provides good phantom power for those. These are the gain controls for the mics. To set the gain, you would adjust the gain here and look for it peaking down here. When it peaks down here, you're about 3 dB down from clipping, so you really don't want to see much peaking. I would normally adjust this by adjusting it up till the light flickers, then back it off just a little bit. Moving on down, there is a comp EQ button. This engages digital compression and EQ that you can preset using the AG controller app. I'll show you more about this later, but this is a soft switch here that engages or disengages that compressor. It is kind of useful for voiceover. If you're using this as a typical audio interface and you have it set to what's called the dry 1-2 mode, then these effects are not recorded. The compressor, reverb are not recorded if you're in the dry 1-2 mode. They are recorded if you're in the input mix or loopback modes. More on that in a little bit. There's a reverb button. You can control the nature of that reverb, the reverb time, the pre-delay, and things like that using the app. And the foot switch can control these 2 features. The mute and the reverb can be defeated using this foot switch up here. And you can set which thing it does based on the AG controller app. I will show you how to set that after a little bit here. So mute basically mutes whatever you're playing through this channel to the main mix, but you can mute it if you're in the dry 1-2 mode. It will still pick this up for USB recording. Channel 2, basically this where it says amp simulator is the same thing. You've got the same compression and EQ options underneath this, along with an amp simulator that will allow you to do clean, distorted, or edgy kinds of guitar sounds by plugging directly into this channel and setting that up in the app. Now, it's not super versatile, and I don't think it sounds that great, but I will demonstrate that later on in this video. And as I said, you can do direct recording from these two channels, post this gain if you have this set to the dry 1-2 modes. Now, channels 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 are very simple. You have the ability to adjust the input gain just with this pad. So if you have a lower level or a higher level signal, you can pad it down. There's even a picture of keyboards on here. I've often run various kinds of guitar processing devices into this channel. There's no EQ, there's no panning on this channel, and really it's this and this knob, and that's pretty much all there is to it. This is very simple. You plug it in here, you adjust it here, you can adjust how it sounds to your monitor speakers or your headphones, and then there is a main stereo out that you can also plug in that has no volume control. So if you plug this into a PA through here, you'd need to use the controls on your PA speaker or speakers in order to control the overall level. But this will control the mix into there. These RCA jacks, which I often will connect to an actual old school cassette deck, work just like this, just the different style of connector. Now, you might ask, can I plug in a turntable here? And the answer is, yeah, you could, if it has the correct phono preamp built in. Otherwise, you'd need an external. There is no phono preamp for a turntable built in. My modern turntable has a switch on there so that basically the preamp EQing is already done, in which case it will work fine plugged into this. Now this is then controlled through this knob right here. So this 5-6 comes right to here, and it's controlled with this knob. You can see the picture of the RCA jacks match up between those. And this knob here is dedicated to the level of USB playback that's coming from your computer when you're connected via USB. So next, I want to talk about how you use this as a 2-in, 2-out audio interface. The inputs to your computer can be either these two separately, individually dry, or you can pick up the full mix off of this and then input that into your computer. Playback from your computer back to this device always comes back to here. So there's 3 modes. We've got the dry channel 1-2 mode, and then the input mix mode. Input mix mode will take everything coming in that you're mixing in and then mix that basically out to your stereo out and your USB out. And you can also then monitor the same thing here, your main mix out. But this is basically for how it goes back to USB. Loopback mode is the same thing as the input mix mode, mixing all 6 of these channels, but then it also mixes in the playback from your computer, allowing you to loop back audio, which can be very useful for streaming situations and many other situations in this mixer, maybe if you're playing along with backing tracks or something like that. Now there's some other connections on here. We have a TRRS connection right here. So you need an adapter for your phone that would adapt whatever the output of your phone is into a 4-conductor TRRS that allows bidirectional in and out to your phone, which you could use if you wanted to mix in an external caller into a live stream. In that case, you also have the option to use mix minus. If you engage mix minus, then the first two channels are not included in the main mix. They're not included in the mix to this aux, which will prevent feedback to the person on the phone. It will also have the side effect of muting it from the monitors as well. So if you're using this mix minus, you would need to probably take your headphones off so you could hear yourself talking, because you would not also appear in your own headphones. The positioning of these knobs I've found to be quite convenient. When I use this mixer on my desk, I can leave my left hand on this and easily grab to control any of these levels, which are the most common things that I would do on this mixer, including turning off my monitors when I'm recording and listening only through headphones. The foot switch jack uses a momentary contact foot switch and will allow you to mute the reverb in both channels. Basically, it turns the reverb on or off, or it will allow you to mute channel 1. So I've set this up with the foot switch so I can show you how the foot switch works for defeating reverb. I've engaged the channel reverb. I'll connect the foot switch. Now keep in mind, this needs to be a momentary contact foot switch. If you have a regular on-off foot switch, you'll need to hit it twice to make it change state. But you'll see when you hit the foot switch, this will start blinking, indicating that it's been bypassed from the foot switch. If you hit it again, then it will go off. You can do pretty much the same thing with mute on channel 1, but you would set that up in the software, which I'll be showing you in just a few minutes. This unit is powered by USB-C on the back. So there's a 5-volt input. I have it connected here. If you're using this with a phone, then you would need to connect this to power and then put it out to the phone. If you're using a computer, this takes about an amp. Most computers would be able to supply power to this. I kind of like to leave it connected this way because I can use it without a computer if it's powered up. So this thing is relatively small. Take a look at it like this. You can see it's about 6 inches in that dimension. And if you look at it this way, it's about 8 inches. It's a little less than 8 inches in this dimension. So in centimeters, it's about 15 by 20 centimeters. The height of it is 2.5 inches to the from the desk to the top of this jack, and that's about 6.5 centimeters. And just to clarify the USB modes, which are labeled streaming out on here, that Dry 1.2 will record only from the first 2 channels. Of course, when you're listening to it, you can monitor everything coming in here through the monitoring, but what's recorded will be 1 and 2. Typically, this is how you would do music recording if you're doing overdubs or maybe recording a guitar vocal. A guitar here and your vocal mic here, perfect for that. Input mix records everything coming into the board minus what's coming back from the computer. This allows you to record with a reference track or even a click track without recording that click track. In loopback mode, you're recording everything that's connected and mixed along with tracks or playback from the computer. So that would allow you to record an entire setup, including backing tracks if you needed to do something like that. The headset connection allows you to connect a TRRS microphone in here, which could be a lapel mic or the mic part of a headset, and that provides power to those kinds of microphones as well. It will actually take over channel 1. So if you connect that here, then you're going to pick up the gain for that right here. And then you can put in a 3.5-inch headphone jack here, which would basically take over from this headphone jack, and you control the level of it here for your headset. Particularly useful if you're streaming gameplay on Twitch. And I explained how the aux and the mix minus works before. So if you've used this mixer or other mixers, or you have other mixers you'd like to see featured on the channel, let me know in the comments below. In the next segment, we're going to look at how this works with the app as well as how it works when connected to a digital audio workstation. Later on, we're going to take a look at what it looks like on the inside, the construction, as well as how it works with the optional mic stand adapter. So now I want to show you how the AG06 looks as an audio interface to your digital audio workstation. In this case, I'm showing it in Traction's waveform digital audio workstation. I've already gone to settings, audio devices. I've selected the Yamaha AG06MK2 as both my output and my input. You can actually see that it's working right now. And you can see here also, this is how it appears. It's a simple 2-in, 2-out interface. So my output is set here as a stereo pair that would come out of the DAW, and the inputs are set as separate left and right channels. And you'll see you're getting my mic on the left and right channels. That's because I have the input mix mode set up on here on the top of the board. If I flip it to the other, you're going to hear it only on the left side. So right now you're probably hearing it from this side. I'm using a Sennheiser MKH416 shotgun mic, which is my typical voiceover mic. It's coming in here. I've got phantom power engaged. I also have this compressor engaged on the front panel, which I'll explain later. You will not hear the effect of that compressor if you're on the dry channel 1, channel 2 recording mode. In that mode, you're picking up the recording for channel 1 right after this gain control. And if you had something plugged in here, it'd be right after this gain control. These things are not, you're not going to record them at all. Now, if we flip down to the input mix mode, then what's ever coming into all of these channels is going to get mixed to the left and right in stereo. And that's what you're hearing right now. Now this is coming panned center, but there is a way to pan it left and right using the app, and I'll show you that later on. Now in the digital audio workstation, I can choose from input 1 and input 2 here, but if I wanted to treat it as a stereo pair, then I would need to configure that in my DAW. And the way you do that in Traction waveform is to go here, select one of these inputs, and then down here, there is an option that says treat as stereo channel pair. So if I put that on, then go back up here and put this on a track, I'm getting my main mix left and right. Now, one other little detail in this DAW is you can put in friendly names or an alias for these setups, and I've already done that. So if I go to settings, audio devices, choose the output or the input, down here there is an alias, and right now that's set to main mix left right. But you could set that to anything, so I could just say AG06 stereo out. It doesn't have to be that, it could be anything, and most DAWs allow you to do something similar. So now let's take a look at this app. This app is something you can download from Yamaha. It's called the AG Controller, and it will run on Mac or Windows, and it does require that you're connected by USB to use the app, but the things that you set up on there are stored in the mixer, so if you want to take it to a gig or just use it without the app, it will keep your last settings. Now, this is the simple mode. There is a detail mode and a simple mode, and you flip between them up here in the upper right corner. So there's this and there's this mode. This is the simple mode. There's also a few other things you can set up here, and the main thing here is under settings. Besides choosing the language, you can choose the purpose or the function of the assignable foot switch between muting the reverb or turning channel 1 mute on and off. Channel 1 mute is kind of useful if you want a remote mute if you're using this for streaming, but reverb if you're using it for maybe singing, if you had a guitar and vocal setup here and you want to be able to talk between songs, then this is probably how you'd set it. So two different functions, same switch. This is how you set that up. And here you can choose your vocal range, and then you can set this, and that's a slider, so it's not just a single thing. And it does do a little bit of change in the EQ curves and the compression. You can choose the kind of microphone. I'm on a condenser mic here, but you can choose a dynamic or a headset situation. planning to talk or to sing, changes the compressor. You can turn reverb on and off right here, and that will do the same thing as hitting the button on the front panel. So you can see that I can turn that on and off on the front panel or here, and it will actually turn it on here as well. There is a sound check. I'm not going to go through this completely, but if you go into this sound check mode, it allows you to take a look here at your recording level. This is the most useful part of this. You can see that I'm in the good range on this. So it's a little bit maybe different view of the metering. Gives you a good idea that you've got your mic set right. If you walk through this wizard, it will record a little sample and play it back to verify that you've got it set up right. Now, in the detail view of this, you've got a little bit more, I guess, professional looking controls. So right here on channel 1, my voice channel, there's presets down here, which you can choose, or you can do these things using these plug-in style compressor and EQ. And so here you've got the ability to adjust your threshold, the ratio, which I believe here is set a little bit too aggressively for voiceover. So I'll tone that down a little bit. And then you can see that here's my gain reduction, meaning that that compressor is actually really doing something. Typical controls here, I might set these a little bit different, but something like that. And then we can turn it off and you can see or hear the difference, and you can turn it back on, add a little makeup gain, maybe make that compression kick in a little sooner. Now, if you're not in the last two modes, if you're in the dry channel 1 mode, you will not record that compressor because you're recording right after this point. But if you're in the loopback mode or the input mix mode, this will get recorded as part of that overall mix. So let's just put that back a little bit. I think it sounds a little better. It's still working. Here's the EQ. You've got typical EQ curve kind of things that you can manipulate here, including the Q, which is the width of the band. And then you can do gain, adding gain or subtracting gain, and kind of dial in a sound that you like. There's a high pass filter switch here, and you could turn that on and off right here. There is no way to do these settings without using this app. And the same thing I said before, if you want to do a panning, you can do that right here under these two graphs. You can see I can pan to the left, I can pan to the right. I can also turn reverb on for that channel and then use a reverb send into the reverb unit right here. Channel 2 has all the same controls plus an amp simulator. I'll come back to that. This is the reverb level, and you can see the output from the reverb here. That's a room reverb. This is the default reverb. So to use the reverb, then you use a send using this fader right here. And it's pretty sensitive, but you'll get the effect of it as you get up into the higher side of this. You can turn that on or off on either channel. And then down here is the reverb setup, which basically gives you a diffusion, a reverb time. We could set it really long, and an initial delay, which is a pre-delay for the reverb. Probably would never want it that long. These more useful. You also have a high pass and a low pass filter, which are quite common and popular on reverb. So you could set that up here, and then back here, the two different channels share that reverb. And so if you want a little less of it on there, this is really designed as a comfort reverb. And a comfort reverb is the kind of thing where it gives you a little bit of ambience if you're singing to do multi-track recording or overdubs so that your voice doesn't sound completely dry. So now we're going to take a listen to this guitar channel, and I'll do that by going in here, and then this is the amp simulator section. All these things are the same. So if I put a guitar into it, start by turning the amp simulator part off. Turn the guitar up a little bit. So let's go to the EQ. You can adjust the curve. This is before the distortion amp simulator part of it. And so you could adjust that curve to do whatever you'd like. And then on the amp simulator part, if you go here, there's some different presets, like this is clean. And in this case, we'll put the EQ and the compressor on. Do a little more compression. And a little gain. So, I mean, it's not, obviously, with a little experimenting here, you might be able to get a pretty nice sound. Maybe put in a low pass filter because you probably don't need so much on the electric guitar. And on electric guitar, you typically would have both of these engaged. That's way too much gain if you put it in the mic position on there. Now let's take a look at this amp simulator. You've got a high gain and a low gain. And I would just generally say, to cut to the chase, that this doesn't sound very good. And let me turn the output down and then try to get at least some kind of a distorted setting here. That's based on the clean. If I go to crunch, and I found if you turn the master up, it gets a little more distorted. Change my lead pickup. These are humbucking pickups on this guitar. And similarly, we could engage the reverb, which I will do right here, with the idea that the reverb will make it sound a little bit less bad. And put the diffusion up, make it a little bit more of a slapback, put the reverb time all the way down. So it's not very versatile. I think if you play around with it enough, you might be able to get a sound you could use for some kinds of songs. But, you know, I don't really know why it's like this. Yamaha is part of the family of companies that includes Line 6. Yamaha makes their own great THR amps. And this is just not great. So, and there's a newer version of this mixer, the AG08, and I really wonder if this feature is better in that than it is in here. The bottom line is that for this, I just don't really use it for this particular feature. I like this little mixer a lot. This is not one of the features that I think is that outstanding. So with that, I think we've walked through the app. We've walked through how it looks as an audio interface. I want to show you a little bit about how it's put together, and then also the cool stand mounting capability for this mixer. So now we're taking a look at the back of the Yamaha AG06 mixer, and there's a few interesting things to point out here. One is the construction, but before I get into that, I wanted to point out that we have these screw holes here, and these allow you to, using an optional mount, which is called a Yamaha BMS10A, it's a microphone stand adapter, then you can mount the mixer to a microphone stand. So that could be very handy in the studio, but particularly on stage. That particular adapter works with a few other mixers from Yamaha and also some of their small Stage Pass series of powered speakers. I think it also works with the Pocket Track recorder as well. So it's kind of a versatile standard that they've come up with. Now, if you wanted to screw something on here using your own hardware, this is compatible with a metric M5 type of a screw or a US number 1228 pitch. I actually figured that out by putting screws in here and then figuring out what the pitch was. However, like anything like this, there is circuitry in behind here, so you don't want to use a particularly long screw. But this is really well designed, so I took the back plate screws out so I can pull this apart and show you what's actually inside the AG06. And you'll see that the circuit boards in here are stacked. This circuit board, which is on a metal bracket, which is screwed in on the back, has the inputs for USB. So I'm assuming that it's got the USB related circuitry on there, as well as things related to power. And it is shielded from the other board using this bracket here. And one thing to note is that if you're using the screw here for the mic stand, there's a hole right in here behind it to give you a little bit of extra depth. And there's quite a bit of space in here, so you've got maybe ½ inch of depth in behind there, so that would avoid you from screwing through the plate and into the board. Kind of interesting how well designed this is. I suppose Yamaha has seen everything over the years. And then the other board, which is the digital mixer board that also has the analog inputs and all the pots and things on it, is in behind there. Now I'm not going to take that apart, but when I first got this, I thought, well, this has a metal front and plastic sides. Well, it turns out that it's in an entire metal cage. So I'm going to turn this to the side. If you kind of pull down on this, you can actually pop these sides off when the back is off, like this. And you can do that on both sides. I don't know exactly why you want to take it apart like this, but I just want to show you the construction of it. Is you can pop those sides off, and then if you look at what we have here, this is a completely metal enclosure. So it's well shielded here with a metal enclosure, a metal top. You can see how it's constructed. It's screwed together here, and then a metal back plate. So in general, it appears to be very well shielded from RF. And I have not had any problems like that. I have with other mixers having them hum or things like that, but this is actually quite, at least on the surface, it looks quite well designed. And then you can see that this is modern surface mount components for all of the chips and things like that. So I thought that was interesting, and the back plate is held in here by screwing in these screws like this. And there's 6 or 7 of these that hold the back plate on. So thank you for watching this video and review of the Yamaha AG06 Mark II. The AG08 has also recently been released that has expanded on this format, making it more of a complete podcasting type of tool. If you're interested in that, let me know in the comments, and we'll try to get one of those in and take a look at that as well. If you're interested in another option for a USB mixer, check out my recent review of the Mackie Onyx 8 that's linked right here.